Hey there, y'all. Welcome. Today, my guest is Francesca Sauls. She is a client of mine and also a jazzy, successful business owner, which we'll tell you a little bit about at the end. And she is going to tell you a little bit about her experience of working with me. So, first question, what people probably want to know, did you lose weight? And if so, how much?
Thank you so much, Lisa, for having me here. I'm like super excited to be here because yes, I lost weight. So
Yay!
I lost 20 pounds in 3 months. And I can tell you that while it seems so easy and joyful and happy to kind of say that now, when I first met you, okay, let's go back. This was, I don't know, I want to say like February, March of this year.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a really bad place, like really
Mm.
bad place. I had weighed I was the heaviest I had ever been, like a weight so high that I just didn't even think it was physically possible for my weight to be that high.
Mm.
And what was really bad about it was that I was experiencing so much, like really negative self-talk every single day to the point where it was really interfering with my life.
Mm.
And so I was in this really bad place where I couldn't lose weight. My mind was just telling me, all of these really negative things like you can't lose weight, nothing will ever work, you're never going to be able to do this. And that in itself was creating the rapid weight gain to the point where I would wake up, weigh myself, and it would be like a ridiculous amount. It would be like 3 pounds more than yesterday. And then like a couple days later, it'd be like 5 pounds more than the day. And I'm like, this is insane. And I could see where like, okay, this isn't just like metabolism or aging, like my mind is creating this and
Mm.
I need help because the only thing that's going to fix it is fixing what's going on in my head.
Okay, so you knew when we got together that it was a mindset problem. Take us back just a little bit prior because I was not your first health coach you worked with this on, correct?
Correct. So I had experienced yo-yo, gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight, losing weight. It was kind of like that 20 pounds. So it was like I would lose the weight and then kind of slip back into old patterns, gain it back, and then feel really bad about the failure of like, oh my gosh, the weight loss seems so easy. Now I feel like it's so hard to get back to where I was. So I would say that went on for the course of like maybe a few years. Um, and as far as like people that I went to for help, it was interesting because like the very first time I was like, okay, maybe I should talk to someone about this. I happened to be in therapy, just therapy for like,
Mm-hmm.
I was seeing like a licensed clinical social worker. So I was like, well, maybe I'll mention it to her because her question was, for the day was just kind of like, so how are things going? And I'm like, you know what? I'm really struggling with my weight. And, her response was kind of interesting. She's a wonderful therapist, but her response was sort of like, join the club, sweetie, like
Like, thanks
not,
for relating, but that doesn't give me hope.
and then she was in no way being like intentionally rude or
Mhm.
dismissive. I mean, when I look back on it and I think about it, I'm like, yeah, like this is a woman who, not to talk about like things that are really difficult, but she helps women like who have lost children to miscarriage, right? For me to be like, I I'm feeling bad because I gained a couple pounds. She's sort of like, give me a real problem, right? So so that was clearly like, okay, therapist, that's not their modality, right? Like for that
Mhm.
particular therapist,
Mhm.
that's just not where you go when you're trying
Mhm.
to lose weight. So eventually I was like, okay, let me see who I can find. And so I did realize that coaching would be helpful. So I think I just Googled like, you know, weight loss coach and I found someone in my area. It was within my uh, insurance, right? So my insurance covered it. So I was like, okay, that's great. And she was a wonderful coach, but she was truly more of a nutritionist, I would say.
Mhm.
So she gave me more of the strategies of what I could do to lose weight
Mm-hmm.
and a little bit of the psychology, but what I really needed was the psychology.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you think about it, you know, it's not really that hard. Like we all know how to lose weight, right? Like instantly we all know like what could work or what does work, or there's no shortage of strategies on how to lose weight. The reason why
Mm.
most of us don't is because there's something mentally blocking us from doing the thing that we need to be doing. And so that's what I realized, when it came time to find you, was that
Mm-hmm.
I need someone who understands the psychology behind behavior change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what I did. I remember when I was Googling, you know, uh, weight loss coach, and I probably Googled like weight loss coach women over 40, because I was like, that's my problem. It's my age. It's, perimenopause and all that. I should get someone who like understands. I remember like seeing if like, there were like three or four people that were in that category, and then I had a a meeting with you, like a little session, and then we just vibed so well that I was like, okay, I don't even need to go to the other appointments. Like you're a yes. So
Yay.
it was definitely a good choice. And I think what is really helpful for people too to understand is that like when it comes to coaching, or when it comes to just trying to attain any goal, but in this conversation we're talking about weight loss, right? Attain
Mm-hmm.
any goal. The fact that you're just doing something is bringing you closer to getting the result. So even though it took me a few years to find the right approach, um, I I don't regret having those experiences with, the therapist that wasn't the right fit and the nutritionist that wasn't the right fit.
Mm-hmm.
Because looking back on it, I had some insights, but the greatest insight was like, okay, this doesn't work. And now I know what does, right? So by the time
Mm-hmm.
I was looking for you, I knew exactly what I needed to look for. And it's interesting because it's almost like, we're talking about a period of a few years that I'm like working through this, but because I was ready and I had learned from, maybe those experiences, the change was so rapid. So it's like, it's not like the change took 2 years. It was by the time, you were able to give me like those targeted questions, the change happened really fast for me. It's not going to happen for everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
But um, I think it's just good for people to know that like just doing something that like if they were to go to you and like even if hypothetically it didn't work, and I don't think that would happen because I think you really know your stuff, but like hypothetically if like what, it wasn't a good fit, then at least okay, well, what is the right fit for me? Like maybe I
Right.
need, maybe I need X. And so it's still valuable to just move forward, to just do something.
That's such a good point because I think people take their past failures as proof there is something wrong with them. There's something with my wrong with my body that my doctor hasn't found yet, or like I'm just a I just suck. Right? I'm just like broken or defective. When in fact it may be that you have like almost all the puzzle pieces and you just need one or two to click into place, and it's like, oh, I can see the picture now. And for you, we were talking about this before we started recording, that I felt like it was kind of like Tetris. Like everything was there, you just needed like one like bump, and then it like dropped down and like cleared everything out. You're like, okay, cool, I'm fixed. Like, again, results not typical, but at
Right.
least for you, it was possible. So that's cool.
Well, what I thought was so fascinating about it was that like when I decided to work with you, I knew that you had kind of given people a framework of like, 16 weeks, 16
Mm-hmm.
sessions, like that's when you're really going to be able to make like that lasting change.
Mm-hmm.
No your packages are great because like you don't have to do the 16 weeks, right? Like you can do them in
Exactly.
like, a few chunks, which I really liked that flexibility. But I was ready to do it for 16 weeks. Like I went into it
Mm-hmm.
thinking like, okay, if I got to do 16 weeks, I've got to do 16 weeks. Like the problem is so bad that 16 weeks and the cost of 16 weeks um, is less painful than the pain that I was feeling at the time.
Wow. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's a
So
really
it's
good
like,
point.
16 weeks, I was willing to do it, spend the money, I was willing to do it. And then when it really only took, like, I want to say, by the time we had our second session, I made huge breakthroughs, which I was like, wow, this is great. Um, third or fourth, by the time it was the fourth session, I was kind of like, I think I'm good. And you had this same, like we had this conversation of like, okay, like, you know, how do you feel the progress has been? Do you feel like you want to move forward, or do you feel like you need? And I was like, I think I'm good. Like I think I'm like, and you sort of agreed. And what
I
I
was like, I know,
appreciated,
right? How
I
disappointing.
I well, I appreciated a few things about that because you really listened to my feedback and
Hmm.
you trusted that I knew what was right for me.
Hmm.
Because that's a good opportunity. I've been coached by lots of people, and I know I totally respect that like everyone's got a business to run, but that's
Yes,
a perfect opportunity for someone to be like, but if you just stay on for 16 weeks, think of how much weight you will lose, and they're not wrong.
exactly.
But
Yeah. Or we can work on some other aspect of your life. This is working so well for you. And, I've had enough sales training that there was a voice in my head kind of yelling that at me. And also, I learned, you and I think, had talked about ages ago. We have another business that we run that I run with my husband, and makes me sound bad, but I learned a lot about integrity from him. And he
right.
is very much like, you know, if we're talking to a client about an IT project and we're not the people, or he thinks it's a dumb project, right?
Yeah.
He's like, I can
Right.
do that, but you're not going to be happy with the result because of X, Y, and Z. There were times when we were in person meetings with clients, and I'm like kicking him under the table because he's talking people out of working with us. But he said, that he had learned through consulting and, just his personal ethics, that if you actually tell somebody that you're not the right person to solve,
Yeah.
something that's not your area of expertise, they actually believe a lot more that you can sell something that, is in your area of expertise. So it's an integrity thing. And again, I learned that from him, that sometimes when you do what short term is not best, for my business, that pays dividends down the road, and it's a lot nicer way to live in the world, right? Like I sleep a lot better that way. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think our values align with integrity. I could sense that in you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, it does pay in dividends because here I am giving you a testimonial, right? Like, and I'm doing it because you deserve it,
Yeah,
right?
and the referrals and the repeat business and things like
Like,
that. So it definitely, obviously, I don't want you to, you're allowed to come back for weight loss. My intention is that you never need to. But right, if there were something else you want to work on, and like you're like, hey, I know you don't specialize in business stuff, but we've kicked around business ideas. What do you think about this? Right? Like I want somebody to feel comfortable coming back if it's something else that I do know about. So why, we talked a little bit before we recorded about trying to discern, right? Because coach is not a regulated term. And even with something that is regulated, right? One doctor is not exactly the same as the next doctor. So, how does one discern what coaching is going to be effective for them when they're shopping for a coach? Or how did you? What tips would you have?
yeah, I would say that because I'm someone who is really into personal development, I would say, decades of like reading books, going to seminars, I'm pretty familiar with coaching, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty familiar with coaching that's effective. And I'm familiar with coaching that's effective for me,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that the value in coaching where you are going to get the strongest results and the strongest, most lasting results are coaches that focus on your psychology. So I am a huge like Tony Robbins fan. And so if you're familiar with Tony Robbins, he has this, I believe it's really just the Pareto principle, right? That, 90% of success is psychology and 10% is strategy, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really 80-20 is the Pareto principle, but
Yeah.
Tony Robbins likes to say 90, like 90% of success in anything is your psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And so that goes down to like your subconscious beliefs about yourself. That goes down to like what you say to yourself every day about what you're experiencing. And so when you and I started working together, before I started working with you, the things I was saying in my head were just very like toxic to the point where like I felt like I couldn't control them. And I really needed someone to be able to like rein that in, to the point where like I already knew like standard like therapy doesn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily do that. That's not why you go to therapy
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. But coaching, effective coaching is going to use a methodology where they are trying to find out how you think, why you think what you do, and reframe it so that you can
Mm-hmm.
think the things that are going to empower you. And so I've been doing so much work lately just on the subconscious mind. And it's really like, it's it dictates like 90 to 95% of like how we behave, right? Like a
Mm-hmm.
simple belief like I'm never going to be able to lose this weight. It seems like kind of benign, right? Like I'll never
Yeah.
be able to lose this weight. Like
Yeah.
how many times do you think something like that, right? I'll
Yeah.
never be able to lose this weight. Think about how many times you think that thought. I mean, you might have like they say we have like thousands of thoughts a day, right? And then the thoughts that you have today were like, you know, 80% of them are the same ones you had yesterday, right? So just that
Mm-hmm.
one belief of like, I'll never be able to lose this weight, I'll never be able to lose this weight over time, I mean, then you're literally programming yourself to not. So what happens in coaching that's effective is, and this is what you and I did, we unearthed some of the things that I was believing about myself and about weight and we even looked over the course of many years like how I see myself. And once you look at all of that's those beliefs, they seem, some of them to me seemed a little ridiculous, right? Once I'm looking at them, you
Yeah.
know, and then once you can see like, okay, like I can see now why I'm gaining all the weight because all day I'm thinking these really disempowering things. And eventually we got to a point where like you asked me just like very practical questions, right? You're like, well, when you look back on your life, like what weight loss strategies have worked for you? And notice that like I liked that you didn't come in as a coach with like this is the like with strategies.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
allowed your clients to decide what strategies work for them because the truth is it's not a matter of like diets aren't universal. Like one diet might work for you, but that doesn't mean it's going to work for another person. It's not like a matter of
Mm-hmm.
like finding the right diet, magic diet that like will work for everybody because there's no diet that will work for everybody, right? So again, it's that 90-10, strategy, the diet is 10% of it. 90% of it is like how you believe what you believe about yourself and all of that. When you believe the right things, the behavior just comes. So you had asked me this question, well, what diets have worked for you? Like what has worked for you?
Mm-hmm.
It was question for me to answer. I've tried like calorie counting and like that doesn't work for me. I've tried, exercising myself, to a point of like really hating it, but doing it at like willpower
Mm,
essentially, right? I'm like, then
yeah.
that's
I call it hate
um
cardio.
hate cardio, right? I remember you said that. Hey, when you said that, I was like, yeah, hate cardio. Like that does not work. Because it's yeah, willpower just doesn't work.
Mhm.
So, for whatever reason, I'd come across this diet when I was in my like late 30s. It's called the ABS diet, ABS ABS diet by David Vinchenko. Um, and it just happened to be one of those books that I read that like had an approach that worked for me. It was really simple. It was just like think of foods as two categories. There are foods that are fat burning and there are foods that are fat storing. Eat more of the foods that are fat burning. You don't have to like completely eliminate the foods that are fat storing. You can have them, but the more of these foods that you eat, the more you're going to burn fat. It
Mhm.
sounds so simple, and that was the beauty of it. It just happened to work for me. And
Mhm.
when I look back on, yeah, my whole life, I'm like, well, that's really the only like occasions where like I intentionally like did a diet, right? Um, and I got the results. Like, I lost 20 pounds. My, you know, abs were flat, and it was great. And then you asked a very practical question. You're like, well, why don't you just try that again? And I was like, huh. And the reason that I didn't was because, on my own, right? The reason that I didn't
Mhm.
was because the beliefs in my head was like, nothing's going to work, nothing's going to work, nothing's going to work, right? And you're like, well, that's not exactly true, right? Like something has worked. You just need to try it again. And you also maybe need to look at, when it worked, what was going on in your life that made it stop working? Why did you gain it? That was really valuable too, because that's where we were able to make this lasting change. Because all you were asking me was like, well, why did it fail? Not like,
Mhm.
why did you fail, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like, what was the failure? What was the little, the diversion?
Yeah.
What do you think you can do maybe next time so that you don't go down that diversion? So that was really powerful. So
Mhm.
all of these things were really, really helpful for me because I felt like you asked really targeted questions. You were very skilled in being able to like engineer how we can make this lasting, not just like, because the last thing I wanted to do was like lose weight and then just gain it again because I'd been down that road for years.
Mhm.
So yeah, just really, really appreciate all of that work that we did.
Yay, yay. And that's a big, like, that's the big dirty secret is a lot of these, whatever plan you do, they don't tell you this up front because then you wouldn't sell any diet books or, and Jenny Craig loves to have repeat customers. But whatever you do, you kind of have to keep doing it forever, not 100%, right? Like you can ease up a little. There's a difference between losing weight and maintenance. But however you eat when you're on Weight Watchers, you don't necessarily have to count points forever, but that kind of needs to be your new normal. If it's, two scrambled eggs with vegetables for breakfast, then you don't reach your goal weight and go back to donuts for breakfast. Like whatever you're doing, you kind of keep doing it. And I think part of the reason people don't tell you that up front is they don't want you to think like, well, in that case, I'll never start. But the thing that's hard to believe and yet is true is when you get used to a new way of eating, like your palate resets. Like I actually like I always joke there's a restaurant downtown here and I always say, "Ooh, they have sexy salads." And me from like in my 20s, we used to make fun of the salad girls. Like, I'll just have a salad. Right? Like eat a burger, you're not going to die. And I do eat a burger every now and again. But to me, like when you get off of a lot of and I don't even know if you did this, but for me, when I got off of a lot of the food that's made in factories to be hyper palatable, your tolerance for sodium, for sugar, for fat resets back more in line with what's in nature, and the healthy food starts to taste good. So eating that way forever is not such a problem. But when you're in the diet mentality of, well, I'll do this until I get the 20 pounds off and then I'll go back to like normal eating.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like, no, this has to be like, you have to be this person, 85, 90% of the time going forward. And if you pick a plan that works for you, once your palate resets, once that becomes your new normal, once that becomes your habit, it's not a big deal. So anyway, we probably ought to wrap up because people have like busy lives and no attention span, ourselves included. But is there any like parting thought, any one little thing that you wanted to be sure to add for the person who's thinking about working with me and sees this? What, anything else that they need to know?
Yeah, I mean, again, that point of the Pareto principle, 80-20 rule, 90% of success is psychology. So when it comes to working with a coach that's going to be able to give you lasting change, look for somebody who understands how to help you facilitate that change in psychology, and that's exactly what you do. So I really appreciate that. And I guess the other thing is really just like, you can't really, just doing something is getting you there, even if the book that you read, the diet book that you read doesn't end up panning out, or the coach that you pick isn't a good fit. Like, at least you can ask yourself, well, why didn't that work? Okay, now I know, now I am able to find the thing that does work. So just doing something, you have to give yourself credit for just doing something. And I definitely think working with a coach that you know really understand psychology is your best bet. But just again, just doing something is going to get you closer to where you want to go.
That's such a good point. And because I love supporting other women in business, I want you to take just a moment. We don't know who's going to watch this now or in the future. Tell everybody a little bit about what you do, who you help. Well, let's start with who you help, how you help them, and how they can get in contact with you.
Yeah, so I design websites and branding for health and wellness entrepreneurs. And you can visit me at ethosbydesign.com. That's ETHOS by design.com, and learn a little bit more about what I do.
Perfect. So if somebody is watching this and they are a health and wellness coach and they need a website, need to redo their website, what about like landing pages, sales pages, funnels, those kind of things?
Yeah, I am. Interestingly enough, I'm right now restructuring things. So I used to exclusively just do websites and branding, but as of right now, I am opening up my programs to include full packages. So branding packages that will have, websites that match the lead magnet that work together in a sales funnel. So, in a nutshell, I'll have, more robust offerings to really get you the result that you want, which is essentially, consistent clients. I mean, that's really what every entrepreneur wants when they come to a web designer. So working on those packages and essentially committing myself to helping entrepreneurs just get the ROI that they're looking for when they pay for a web designer.
Well, and I love that you understand that, like not trying to throw shade on other people, but we're all as humans like this. We're interested in the part we're interested in. So a lot of people when you're working on a website, they're either really interested in, they're a graphic designer, they're really interested in, and I'm sure you are interested in these things as well, but they're more interested in what looks good, or they're real technical and they're more interested in like the plugins on the back end and all the whiz bangy features. And as a business owner, like I want it to look good and do stuff, but I really don't care about any of that. I just want it to like make me money.
Exactly.
Right? Like
Yeah.
tell the people what I do, accurately and appealingly represent what I do. Oh, and PS, by the way, for anybody in that boat that's watching, the sales page can be on your website. you don't need to buy ClickFunnels. Don't
Don't
tell the marketing
don't tell,
pros.
don't tell
Don't tell
Russell
Russell.
Brunson.
Don't tell Russell, but you don't need him if you have a website.
Hundreds of millions of dollars. He can handle
I was
it.
paying
I'm
like
sure.
$100 a month because I didn't know. And somebody was like, you can put your landing page on your website. I'm like, what?
That's how good of a marketer he is. I love Russell Brunson. Like I think he's a good guy, and I think
Yeah.
he's brilliant. And I've used ClickFunnels, and it's a fantastic tool.
Yeah.
It's just somehow he's able to, like, the people who are in his tribe, he's able to brainwash them into thinking like it's ClickFunnels is everything,
Yeah.
and it's like it's a sales page. Like that's what
Yeah.
it is. Yes, you can, recreate it somehow, but no shade on him. Like it's a fantastic tool.
Exactly. Like high five for him from a business perspective. But
Yeah.
like, again, just between the three of us, you, me, and the health coach, fitness coach, aspiring entrepreneur that's watching, you don't have
Yeah.
to give him any money. Francesca will hook you up. All right. And if you're watching this for the weight loss piece and you want to work with me, lisaduke.net is my website. If you go from there to the how to start page, there's a little video with information on my program. Under the video, my online calendar, you can schedule an initial consultation that's totally free. You pick the date and the time. It'll take you over to another page and give me some information on you. But at the bottom, there are check boxes, and the price for a package of sessions is in those check boxes at the bottom. So I don't plaster it everywhere because then it makes it hard to change. I want this to be evergreen, but I do disclose that ahead of time because I don't love the experience either as a customer or as a business owner, a vendor, a coach. I don't love the experience of like getting somebody on the phone and then like slapping them across the face with the money in their right. It doesn't feel good for anybody. So it is disclosed ahead of time if you're curious about that. So lisaduke.net. And thank you so much, Francesca, for sharing your experience.
Happy to share. Thank you for having me.